Hello for the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time, using the first reading Isaiah little 55, 6 to 9, and Matthew's Gospel, chapter 21 to 16. And it's called It Ain't Fair. But at any rate, another parable. And we love the parables, the prodigal son, the good shepherd, and the good Samaritan. And we love those. But there's one parable today. It is the most un-American parable in the New Testament. That's why I called it It Ain't Fair. Americans and money and capitalism, and it permeates us. We're talking and speaking about a just wage or a fair $15 an hour at least. And many people work for less. Many people don't work too much. They sit on their money and then it just piles up. But it's capitalism. But we sort of do deep down believe that you should, if you do a good day's pay, you ought to get a good day's amount to live on. And that's what this is all about. And the parable of the story goes, the landowner goes out and hires 5 different people. He goes out at dawn, he goes out at 9, he goes out at 12, 3 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. And these guys, gals, whoever, work all day, slave in the sun. And when pay time comes, boom, they all get a daily wage. At the time of Jesus, the daily wage was a denarius. They all received denarius. Oh, it didn't go well with the American type back in the time of Jesus. And we worked the whole day in the sun. And this is what we get, same thing as they did. It's not fair. It's not fair. And Jesus said, well, you agreed with me for a day's wage, and I paid you a day's wage. Well, what's wrong with that? Take your day's wage and go home and spend it. Have a good time. Well, I'm sure it didn't happen exactly like that, but it dealt with justice, a day's wage, and an agreement. I just made a contract with a cleaning company that they come to my house every other month. But for 1 month, it costs $116. And 2 people come and they clean like mad, good, well, for 2 hours. So it's 2 people, 2 hours, 4 hours for $116. That's not bad. It's better than minimum wage. But justice, there's another way of looking at it, this parable. And that other way is as far as sort of generosity or need. They pay the worker who comes to work for me according to the worker's needs. And so if you need a day's wage and I give you a day's wage, well then that's fine. That's our agreement. And Jesus tells them the same. He was a just landowner and he paid a just wage. But he gave some more than others. And he's just generous. He's fair, but he's generous. Well, because this person was looking for the needs of the worker and how much money he or she would need for his or her family in the day. And as I say, that was the denarius. So there's a whole different mentality. And that generous person, that landowner, is like God. The God is so generous. He takes care of your needs, whether you work for him or with him or his way, 1 hour, or 8 hours. God is so, so generous. And there's one other way that this parable is interpreted. I sort of like it, but I don't think it really is the meaning what Jesus wanted. And that has to do with the history of salvation. The history from the beginning of the world, really, or the days of the dinosaurs, until the end of time, end of the world the way it is, the second coming, or when heaven begins. So if you go back and have creation and you go back 150 million years and have dinosaurs, sooner or later you have a man, a woman, a baby. You have a human, whenever that is. What is the exact date? How far it goes back? We don't know, absolutely no. But it goes back a long time. And we explain that God made it or helped that evolve the way it is. We call that the Garden of Paradise story. Well, then the prophets came, 900, 800 years before Christ. The kings came in the history of salvation with the Jewish people. And lo and behold, Jesus came. Wow, wouldn't it have been nice to be there working for Jesus at that time? And then since Jesus, we got 2,000 years to today, Sunday, is the 20th, 2020. 20202020. Pretty interesting. Or how much longer is it going to be before the heaven comes at the end of the world, or how it doesn't make any difference. If you lived at the time of Jesus, and many people say, boy, I wish I lived then. Or if you live right now, today, 2020. Or if you live in 2,000 years from now, or 22,000 years from now, God, and you come into the end of the day, the end of your day, the end of your life, God is generous. And God is a giver. And our God is not only a just God, but he's better than just. He's generous. Our God is merciful. I think if you take all three of those ways of the strict justice, which the landowner did, and they only worked 1 hour to 8 hours, whatever, or if you only worked and were hired at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you got the day's wage. So it was justice, and then it was generosity, and then I sort of threw in, it's sort of like the day equals the history of salvation from early dawn until the second coming of Christ. It's interesting. I think very interesting. So really, if you sort of understand it that way, I don't think you will, even if you're the typical American capitalist and think it ain't fair, this parable. I think it's fair. I think it's sort of interesting, but I think it shows the generosity of Jesus, or the generosity of God to every person who ever works or is in existence in the history of our world on planet Earth. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty good. I sort of like those interpretations. How about you? Have a good day.